Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Taco Society Presents. And we're here with Phil. And, oh my God, look who's here. Sydney, welcome back.
Thank you.
Gosh, you're looking great. We missed you.
Thank you. I missed you guys too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good to see you.
Was it nice having all this time off, not worrying about the show and fretting and all that planning?
Well, I missed the show.
I'm sure you did.
I missed the show.
Yeah, we talked a little bit during her absence, and I think we've explained before that you had some minor medical issues.
Yeah,
And,
some surgeries.
yeah, and you're on your way to recovery.
I am.
That's great.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, look at that bright smile. It's great to have you back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I missed you guys.
Oh, well, we missed you too. Yeah. We've got a little bit to talk about tonight, not a whole lot before we get into our guests. But I'll start with some of the news I have, and then I'll go to you guys. For one, there was a release party for Christopher Golden's Ararat. I've started that book. It's really good. It's about this mountain called Ararat, and there's a snow avalanche or something that happens, and this cave opens up. What's inside the cave is an ark, and they believe it's Noah's Ark. So all these teams are racing up to claim the ark, and the two main protagonists of the I assume they are. I haven't gotten that far into it. Of the novel, find it, and there's something in there in the ark, and
Ooh.
I'm only about a third of the way in, but it's riveting. It's really good.
It sounds like a Douglas Preston Lincoln Child type of book.
It could be, but if
Yeah.
if I had to equate it to anything, his earlier book, Snowblind, with all the snowstorms and the
Right.
winds and everything else, it brings that to mind. And to me, that was his masterpiece, Chris's. And this could equal that. I won't know until I'm finished, but it's really enjoyable, and I would recommend that to everybody. He had the release party for it at Andover Books in North Andover. And,
In Andover.
In Andover?
Yeah, it was
North-
actually
oh,
Andover Route 28.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Different towns.
It was, because I made a wrong turn. I wound up in North Andover.
You should have swung by.
I went by your house. I did. That corner. And Jim Moore, he was there also, and he was reading as well as Chris. He read from The Last Sacrifice, which is if you like fantasy, it's a fantastic book. Medieval fantasy, really good. Chris also announced that the Merrimack Book Festival will be another thing this year. Last year's was great. It was super crowded, a lot of authors there. I'm trying to think.
And when he says Merrimack, that means the river, not the town. So,
Oh, exactly.
So it actually is in probably Haverhill,
It is in
Yeah.
Haverhill. It's at the Haverhill Library.
Haverhill, Massachusetts.
Yeah, and there was a lot of authors here last year. I know I sold a lot of books.
Yeah,
and
that's
you,
great.
I don't know how
Yeah.
you did. You sold some.
I sold a pretty good amount. Yeah,
Good,
yeah,
good.
yeah,
So,
yeah. My spot wasn't as good as yours, though. You were right up in the front next to Scott. Scott Gosler. So
Oh,
much
was I?
better,
Yeah.
much better.
Well, you got a good
location.
memory. I didn't even
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Jeez.
Oh, I was jealous of that location because I
Oh, were
wanted that
you?
location. Yeah. I was thinking of throwing you out and taking.
Well,
you
it's
over.
all location, like real estate. It's all location, right?
Exactly.
And I got two other things before we move on to you guys. Bracken McLeod also has a new book out called 13 Views of the Suicide Woods.
Oh, that was a short story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's got 13 short stories in it, and they're wonderful. They range from everything from, I call observational horror. You sit back, you're a bystander, and you're looking at all these people with mostly unordinary lives going through hell. There's no other way to describe it.
Wow.
And there's some hardcore horror in there too. So if you're a fan of quiet horror or hardcore horror, 13 Views of the Suicide Woods, I think would be right up your alley. And the last thing I have is John McElveen, friend of the show. He started a new imprint, a new publishing company.
Oh, wow.
It's called Haverhill House. And you're not going to believe this, but one of the things coming up for October, in fact, he's going to debut it at this Merrimack Book Festival, is the last Rick Hodler release.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Wow.
there was one unpublished book that Holly, his wife,
yeah.
had of Rick's, and she contacted John, or John contacted her, and they're going to publish it.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's really big news. I'm a huge Rick Hodler fan. It's funny, I like his old stuff, love his old stuff, but everything that he wrote within the last 5 or 10 years before he died, I really enjoyed. I
He
actually
had a
liked it more.
huge
He
following.
did. He did.
Huge.
Brilliant man, good writer. He's sorely missed.
A great guy, too.
Yeah.
Oh, he was, yeah. Yeah, I could probably go on telling stories and stories about him, but yeah, I do miss him. I do miss him. And so this new book, and I don't want to give the title away. I don't know if it's been released yet or not, but we look forward to that. And we'll have more information on Haverhill House. Haverhill House, and some of their releases coming up soon. What do you guys got?
I don't really have too much news other than Chiral Mad 3, which is Michael Bailey's third installment of the Chiral Mad series. It's an anthology. I have 2 poems in there.
Excellent.
That is, I love being in his books.
They're acclaimed releases. Everybody loves those.
Yeah, he's an excellent editor and also an incredible writer, because I actually published his short story and poetry collection, Inkblots and Bloodspots, and loved his work.
Oh, you published it?
Yeah,
Oh.
with Villipede.
Did you really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he's also got a short story that is on the list for best short fiction on the Stoker ballot, and Chiral Mad is on the list, on the ballot for best anthology, best fiction anthology. So
Jeez,
that's
good.
exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
he's really the one, but
Well,
and I think that some another piece from it, maybe a long fiction piece, is on the
Awesome.
ballot. I can't remember whose, but yeah. So
good for him. Good for
yeah,
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made the recommended reading list, but I never got past that.
Oh,
So I
well,
know.
it's tough. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really.
Hey, yeah, it's close, and I'm happy.
Mhm.
And you know,
Yeah.
if people picked up my book because of that, it makes me
Yeah.
even happier.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What you got?
Oh, I don't really have too much either, but a horror anthology that Great Old Ones Publishing is going to be releasing in.
Which is your publishing house?
Oh, right, yeah. And they're going to be releasing, or we're going to be releasing a book in mid-year, so probably around July. And we're in some final talks with having Gregory L. Norris, author from New Hampshire, to be the editor. So.
Excellent.
that's in-
There's no better editor.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, he really is.
Invocations.
Yeah, Invocations
Yep.
is the title of it. Yeah.
Great.
So.
And writer.
Yeah, he's a great writer too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
His
He's
work
prolific,
is-
that's for sure.
Oh my
My
God,
God.
I cannot
Yeah.
believe how much.
Like 200 stories a year, or some
Yeah,
crazy
Yeah.
number.
He,
Yeah, that's
he
crazy.
just.
And he's a nice
he's
man
on
too.
fire.
Just a
Oh,
great.
he's a
Oh, yeah.
love.
Yeah, fantastic guy.
Yeah.
He's wonderful.
Good.
Yeah.
And you've got some Eric Brown books coming out, or book coming out anyway.
Yeah. Actually, Eric S. Brown, he's having 2 books coming out within the next 5 weeks through Great Old Ones Publishing as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. One is called What the heck?
Bigfoot.
Yeah, but no, it's Sasquatch Lake.
Oh,
Part 2, it's called. Yeah. So,
Did
so
you
it is
publish
really.
part 1?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. It was, he's made a lot of money off that book.
Wow.
The first one. Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah. And then he's going to have a reprint for not an anthology, apocalyptic story. Bam Bam. It's called. I forget the exact title. It's a long and crazy title, but it was a pretty good book. I read it before it was published by the original press, and our friend David Bernstein from New York City, author, he's
Oh, yeah.
writing a forward for it. So.
good.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave's a nice guy too. He and Sandy, just a great couple.
Yeah.
They just had a baby.
They just had a
Oh,
baby.
no
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
No
Yep.
kidding.
In fact, she just went back to work.
Oh my God.
I think this week.
Yeah, I think it's-
Oh,
think
good
so.
for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, she was
Oh.
heartbroken. You know, of course, leaving the baby at home. You know, you
Oh,
have a baby,
yeah.
you spend all that time. And,
Right.
Oh,
but we wish Dave and Sandy a lot of luck with that.
yeah, good
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
them.
Yeah.
That it?
I
Think
think
so,
that's
yeah.
it.
Great. I can't wait to get to our guests. We've got 2 pretty cool guests coming tonight.
Yep.
Uh,
Fairly local, both of them. Fairly local.
Yeah, one Nashua and one
Yeah,
Methuen.
Methuen, yeah.
Yeah, the first guest is going to be Doug Rinaldi, and the second guest will be
John Mack.
John Mack. Great. So stay tuned, and we'll be back in a minute. We're back. We've got our first guest here, Doug Rinaldi.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing all right.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, you
Pleasure.
guys are meeting for the first time,
That's right.
Correct.
Well, we
Yeah.
met earlier, but.
Well, I mean, tonight.
Yeah.
Why don't you read the intro, and then we'll get into the questions.
All right. So Doug was born and raised in Connecticut. Spending his younger years exploring the woods near home, Doug envisioned otherworldly scenarios that ignited his imagination. Art was life. Throughout adolescence, he created, inventing horrifying tales about devious lunch ladies and world-eating monsters. In 1995, he received his art degree in computer animation and special effects for stage and screen. However, writing dark fiction was his true calling. At the turn of the millennium, he bid Connecticut a final farewell and relocated to Boston, Massachusetts, where he has been honing his writing and artistic skills ever since.
It's interesting. Geez, welcome to
Welcome.
Taco Society again. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Great to be here.
Yeah. Don't let the graveyard behind you scare you. I mean, we've only lost 2 guests, okay? So the odds are in your favor that you won't be eaten. Before we get into your work, I want to talk about your past just for a minute, if you don't mind. Personally, I'm big on sharing my work in progress with other people in writers' groups. I read somewhere that you once worked in a bookstore, met someone, and the two of you guys started a writers' group.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk about that and let us know how it turned out?
Yeah. Right after I graduated college, when I moved back to Connecticut, I got a job at Barnes & Noble.
Barnes and Noble.
Yep. And that's where I met a buddy of mine, Mark Parker. He lives up in Lowell now. He's actually the owner and operator of Scarlet Galleon Publications.
Oh,
I've heard of
have
that.
you?
Yeah, sure.
And we both realized we both like the same authors. We both enjoy writing. We collaborated on something at one point, but then we slowly, the more we talked about it, more people got interested in writing. And like, oh yeah, I dabbled before.
Yeah.
So we just started getting people together, and then what we would do is we'd give each other assignments. Like, you have these three things to
Prompts?
mention. Yep.
Okay.
To bring up in your story somehow.
Uh-huh.
And after a week or two, we'd meet up again and we'd read stories to each other.
So it was more of a learning process, learning how to write, or just developing skills?
Developing skills.
Yeah.
If you couldn't come up with something yourself, that's why we provided the prompts to see what kind of creative way
Okay.
you can incorporate it in the story without just coming off as ridiculous.
Did any of these stories get published?
A couple of them have ended up in my first collection. Well,
Oh,
parts
great.
of them.
Oh, that's
Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
Um,
That's Purgatory Behind These Eyes?
Yep,
Yeah, okay.
yep. And I eventually moved up to the Boston area,
Uh-huh.
and haven't really been in much of a writing group until I discovered New England Horror Writers.
Great, good. Yeah, let's talk about that, because I do have that here as one of the things to talk to you about. You are a member of the New England Horror Writers Group. and
Correct.
Led by Scott Goswald, who does a great job.
Yep, he's all over the place.
How he pulls this thing together
Yeah.
is beyond me, but you know, we're very thankful for him. And you've got a story featured in their last release, Wicked Witches. Tell us first what you do get out of the NHEW, and secondly, a little bit about your story in the anthology.
Sure. New England Horror Writers is pretty much my go-to when I have questions, grammar related or business related, because it's just a bunch of cool people, all like-minded, and they're all just so approachable that I have no problem asking the question. I don't feel silly asking the question,
Good.
whether in Facebook
that's
and
great.
in real life. And all they want to do is help each other. And then we have the writing group, New England Horror Writers Group, which a bunch of us just ask people to beta read, and we give our feedback to for these stories back to them, and they throw
that's
out there
excellent.
into
Yeah.
the ether to see if they
That's
can get published.
fantastic.
And I just think it's a really good thing to have. especially with people who kind of suffer from like writer's block or motivation. Just it's cool seeing what other people.
Good to have that
are doing.
resource.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
feedback is invaluable.
The
Oh,
feedback and the
absolutely.
motivation of your peers
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, how about your story in Wicked Witches?
That story, it's called the Jatinga Effect.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty obscure title. Briefly, Jatinga is an area in India, and a long time ago they were having this issue because it was monsoon season all the time, and that created lots of fog, and that was screwing up the birds in the area, their equilibrium, and they would hone in on certain magnetic frequencies. So with all the rain and fog, they would just rocket into the ground and kill themselves.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
And a long time ago, before science made it to the area or scientists got involved, people thought it was witchcraft.
Ah,
So I incorporated that phenomenon into my story.
That's pretty cool.
About
Yeah,
the witches.
is that something that you had like a personal connection to or knowledge of before you wrote the story, or?
I knew of the phenomenon.
Oh.
I just never knew where it took place or
Oh,
Jatinga,
Wow.
where that was. I just remembered it. So I Googled birds flying into the ground. And I came up with Jatinga.
wow.
you got a question?
Yeah, so we like to ask our guests about their writing process. Do you have a ritual, and is writing hard for you? I mean, we just kind of talked a little bit about you getting feedback from the New England horror writers,
Yeah.
but what's it like?
Don't really have much of a ritual. I just have lots of bad habits.
Like what?
I write in vignettes now. I don't write front to back, start to end. I don't write in acts. Sometimes I try to stick to the 3 acts, but if I get an idea for where I want the story to go, I'll write that section of the story and then try to make the rest of the story fit around that. It's arduous. It's backwards. I know. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But I have this issue with motivation. Stems from like anxiety and depression, where you want to do something so bad and you want to be so good at it, but you're just petrified and paralyzed. So I'll just stare at a screen, or I'll go take a nap because I don't know what else to do with myself. So it's rough to. I'm amazed at how much I've actually produced.
I was just going to say,
That's-
for somebody that
that's
has that
great.
problem, you get quite a few books out there. Excuse
Yeah.
me.
Have you ever tried writing with your, are you a righty? Have you ever tried writing with your left hand?
Not on purpose.
Someone recommended that to me when I'm in like having a block or in that kind of a funk. Writing with your left hand sort of, if you're a righty, sort of gets you out of that self-editing mode, and you can't be perfect. You can't get it right, and it releases something. So.
I wonder
don't
what
know.
the equivalent would be on a word processor, because most of
Well,
us.
oh yeah.
Keyboard upside down.
I forgot I still write longhand.
I think
but-
most of us use
yeah.
a computer, but it's a good point.
Well-
It's like when you edit your work, they tell you to read the last paragraph, then the next one, then the next
Yeah.
one, the next one.
And it would probably be good too to write longhand, just as something different too, just to break up
Spur.
your routine.
Yeah, I do
and-
that with a lot of
yeah,
ideas
yeah.
that I don't
That's
have
good.
access to a word
Yeah,
processing thing.
yeah.
That I'll just scribble in a notepad and save for later, put in my pocket.
Okay.
Well, you're not alone in feeling that way. The way you.
No,
well,
no,
there are
no.
a lot of writers who feel exactly the way
Yeah.
you do.
Should get moving here. You've written a lot of short stories, and in my opinion, and that doesn't count for much, but if I had to describe them, I'd say they approach extreme horror, or they're close to it. What about that kind of horror fiction appeals to you?
I've always been into horror movies. I used to hate them. I was terrified, nightmares all the time. Praying before I went to sleep that I wouldn't have nightmares.
That's interesting.
That's bad, yeah.
And then one summer I just sat myself down, school break, watched every Friday the 13th up to date, right in a row from the video store. And that kind of broke me of my fear of horror movies.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
So I pretty much desensitized myself in 1 week when I was 13.
What a story, huh?
Yeah,
Jeez.
that's so interesting.
But I've always gravitated to more dark things, more sinister things. I write a lot of, like you hear a lot of authors say, write what you want to read. I write what I want to see on TV.
Okay.
and in the movies.
So you've got a script in mind when you're writing?
Yeah.
Okay.
How can I transmit what I'm thinking onto paper that when someone reads it, it feels cinematic to them?
Which is unusual, because the stuff you write is, I'll go to the next question. I see a lot of Lovecraftian influence in your work. That's hard to portray on a screen. You know, it's the monsters and the tentacles, and, you know, it's just, you can do it. It's just a lot of CGI normally. What is it, does Lovecraft appeal to you? Is that kind of work, you know, something you strive to emulate?
I'm more of a fan than trying to emulate him. I'm a really big fan. He's right here on my
Oh,
arm.
geez, look at that. Wow. That's Lovecraft.
Yep. And that whole sleeve is dedicated to him and his work.
Holy cow.
But I'm more interested in how he built his worlds. He's very antiquated with his style. It's not for everybody. It's hard to get into. But the set pieces he builds and the way he takes these flawed but brilliant people in certain aspects and just completely unravels them. It's just very appealing. It's unique to me, and I enjoy people who try to emulate that and do it well. I think Lovecraft is a good base for horror writers, especially if you want to get into the weirder stuff, the darker stuff, cosmic terror, I guess you want to call it.
You put it very well.
Yeah.
Because when I tend to think of Lovecraftian horror as, like I said, tentacles and monsters. You're looking at it from a plot standpoint where these people are just falling apart. You know, that's a revelation to me. I just I don't read enough Lovecraft to make that distinction. But
and I think that can be portrayed in movies.
that part, absolutely, yeah.
I think it can. I mean, it definitely can. Yeah.
I agree.
We're going to move on here because we are running out of time. Your latest book, Forever Cried the Abyss.
Yep.
A triptych. Is that how it's pronounced?
Triptych.
Triptych.
Yep.
It contains 3 stories, which I would consider Lovecraftian. My favorite of the 3 is
Cyberites.
Cyberites. See, all these weird names, Lovecraft names, I
I
can't.
do that to myself. Yeah.
Can you explain first, you know, what a triptych is? Because I thought that was kind of cool. And tell us what Cyberites is about, how that was born.
A triptych is 3 pieces of literature or music that relate or contrast each other, but it's always in 3s. And so when I wrote this, these are 3 of my most, I don't want to say cosmic, but most relatable. And
To each other.
And as I was putting them together, one of my beta readers said you should kind of link them a little more. So I left little Easter eggs in each story to go back to the other stories in there. And I was like, oh, triptych, you know, they all relate together. Let me throw that in the title, why not?
Well,
Make it even longer.
It's kind of cool.
You got Cyberites. I was just looking for a word that meant a bunch of people that are really into, you know, pleasing themselves and pleasure and hedonistic. So I built a cult around that kind of philosophy, gimme, gimme, gimme kind of thing. And it's probably one of my more darker pieces. But I'm really pleased with the way it came out. I get a lot of decent feedback on that one because it goes places people weren't quite expecting from the beginning, opening act to where it ends.
Well, just the whole concept of a dad going in search for a lost daughter, essentially, who's been captured by this cult. And you don't hold any punches in the story. I mean, it's really explicit and terrifying.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who did the covers?
Me.
No kidding.
Yep, I have a few friends that are also photographers.
Oh yeah, because you have the design or the degree rather. And, yep.
So I look through their stuff, ask permission. They say go ahead,
Wow.
and I just do my little thing on there. That's something I want to make a business out of because it's terrifying to do.
It is, I
And especially
know.
when you're self-publishing and you throw yourself out there. Like I did the
Yeah.
cover too.
Covers are tough.
Yeah.
But they came out great.
Thank you.
We got time for one more question.
All right, so there are so many new horror writers out there and coming out all the time, and they are putting out such incredible work. If you had to pick 3 of the newer horror writers to recommend to our viewers, which 3 would you pick?
All right. New to me, anyways. I'll start with Curtis M. Lawson.
Oh, yeah,
He
Curtis, yeah.
runs the Weird
Yep.
Readings. He is kind of some weird new wave, new jack kind of combine everything into one story with the kitchen sink, and he just spins a crazy fun tale.
Almost like yours.
His first novel. It's a bad world. There's 4 bads in there. I read that, and it just blew me away. It was funny. It had a lot of suspense, adventure,
Yeah.
and it was just dark, and it just throws everything at you.
Good.
Another one would be Greg Giffune.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Greg's
you
great.
featured him
Yeah.
before.
That man makes it look easy.
Uh,
He just puts it out there. Everything
He's
feels
not new,
heartfelt.
though. He's been doing this.
He's
for-
new to me.
Oh,
He's-
okay.
I just discovered him last year.
You
and-
got a lot of reading ahead of you, I tell
Yeah.
you. Some really good stuff,
Yeah.
too.
And then Matthew M. Bartlett.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a friend
Gateways
of the
to
show.
Abomination.
Yeah.
That thing blew me away. That his mind must be full of bones and broken glass and dead puppies or something.
I'm sure Matt would love that description, too.
But the way he laid that out, all vignettes that relate together in the town of Leeds with the radio
Yeah.
station,
Yeah.
it was just brilliant.
You think he's got I've read Gateways, but I think he's got a follow-up to that, doesn't he? A new one that just came out or something that's coming
He's
out?
got something coming out about a job interview, or if I read that right.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's like with two other writers. But I'll read anything the man.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, he is.
yeah, we're hoping to, we were going to see him at the Weird Writing, but he never
Mm-hmm.
showed up. And
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see him at Nikon or some other place.
Yeah, hope so.
Hey, you got something to read for us.
Yep.
Great.
Great.
I'm going to read a little bit of your favorite,
Cyberites?
Cyberites.
Remember, this is a PG show.
I practiced my PG-ness. All right. The full title is Cyberites, or Enmity of Perverse Existence. Again, I just go crazy with long titles. What can I do for you? Asked the man through his unhygienic grin. Jim anxiously thumbed through a pamphlet. Despite already knowing his purpose for being there, the reality of the situation, in the form of colored images jumping off the brochure, solidified the knot twisting and tying in his gut. I'm interested in room 315 and possibly 318 as well, he admitted in a hush, even though no one else was around. Mr. Halitosis' smile broadened, showing off half a mouthful of pumpkin-colored teeth. Solid choices, my friend. He spun around in his beat-up stool to a pegboard lined with keys, almost falling off the wobbly thing in the process. He caught his balance and said, "This old thing needs to be put out to pasture. One too many years of duct tape triage," he chuckled. Haven't seen you around here before, pal. Got a name?" Jim's anger boiled, but he forced a smile, answering, "Yeah, it's been a while. Name's Jim." "That's an interesting forename you got there, Jim." "Well, irregardless, we're glad to have you back. Name's Buxton, but my friends call me Buck." He looked down his nose at the pegboard. Let's see then. El numero tres 15 y 18. Buck glanced back at Jim with a sly wink. "That's Spanish." With another chuckle, he turned back to the board, but stopped and shook his head. "Whoops." He tapped the empty spot under the peeling 315 label. "You are out of luck, Jim. Looks like that one's been scooped up for the foreseeable future." He next scanned for 318. Same thing, I'm afraid. The proprietor spun back around to the counter with a giddy whee for added effect. "Sorry about that. Don't seem to be your lucky day, friend. A couple of them rooms in that price range been kind of popular these days, if you catch my drift." Perversity glinted in the wink of his hooded eye. Jim searched the room. The door behind him, marked "Private Employees Only," on the opposite side, led back to the crappy backwarders half outpost, half pawn shop called Mountain Buck's General Store. Jutting up to the side of a mountain, it was your one-stop shop for crap beer, bait and tackle, and beef jerky. This room, though, was nearly empty, save for the overstocked merchandise. Nothing gave any outward sleazy vibe or lent credence to the rumors that had circled this place for decades. On the other side of Buck's setup, he saw the entrance that led down below, to the place with the doors those hanging keys unlocked. Behind Buck, a key clearly labeled Master Key dangled from a hook. Jim reached into his jacket, quietly thankful for the general store behind him was no longer open. "Did you have any others in mind? Shame to waste a trip," Buck asked, slipping through the pamphlet, trying to be helpful. "We got it all sorta." Click! Jim's hand shook as he cocked the hammer of his Sig Sauer P220 he had pulled out from under his jacket. The last thing he wanted was for this to go sideways, to come in here all guns blazing. Apparently it wasn't going to be that simple. Where's my daughter? What in the name of holy crap now? How many are down there now? Buck stared cross-eyed at the barrel pointed in the middle of his face. Let me see. He started, cautiously looking over his shoulder. Looks to be about 5 or 6 at the moment, give or take. Jim glanced at the board, memorizing spots, the missing keys, before glancing down behind the stairs. He took a deep breath, bothered that this was now the only solution. In his periphery, he saw Buck reaching for something. Probably not the best idea you have today, friend.
Great.
Stop there.
Yes.
Keep you all in suspense.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what happens afterwards, so that's just the start. Well, thank you very much.
That
Thank
was
you.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you,
really
Doug.
enjoyed you being on the show.
Appreciate
Yeah,
appreciate
hopefully
it.
someday in the future you'll be back. And
Yeah, anytime.
You got it.
Right down the road.
Well, thank you, sir. Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
Thanks, Doug.
Pleasure.
Okay, I'm Doug.
I'm
Thank
Doug.
you, and we'll be right back with our next guest.
All right, we are back, and we have a new guest, a man named John Mack.
Hi.
How's it going, John? And Sean, have you ever met John before?
No, actually, we have never met.
But you have something in common with him.
What's
You-
that?
Same table of contents, maybe?
Oh, yes, that's right. We were both in Bugs.
Published in the same book.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And John is a local author from the Nashua, New Hampshire area. And I do have a little bio from you, which is actually right from this book here, but I wrote it on a piece of paper so I wouldn't lose the page. And,
Okay.
well, let me read it. This is what it says about John, and John's bio states, John's imagination is like dominoes. Once the first thought is struck into motion, the following sequence of brilliant ideas gets set into an unstoppable motion until the chain reaches its conclusion. Whether it is zombies, orcs, wizards, or aliens, each character he puts to paper is as if he had lived a lifetime in their shoes. And that's a pretty quick and easy bio without pretentious nonsense. You went right there and explained, so that's
Thank you.
kind of cool. But we do have a bunch of questions for you, so folks out in the audience will learn about you. And Shauna, you have a question?
Yes. So with so many talented writers in the Nashua Writers Group, you were the first to be published. How did that feel, and how did it come about?
Well, it felt great, you know. Someone in the group, I can't recall who it was, but they said that there's a new anthology, which is a big book of new short horrors. It was accepting submissions, and that we should all write something and submit it. And just about everyone in the group did. And myself and Gregory Norris were both accepted out of the
Aw.
group into the same book.
Yep.
So that was great. I had another book that I was writing called Zombie Me, which is a horror zombie story told from the perspective of the zombie.
Oh.
Yeah, it was quite good. I'm going to rewrite the ending because I don't like the ending, but the story itself is really good. But there's one paragraph that I was told by my group I would never get the book published because this paragraph is just too horrific.
Really?
And the advertisement for getting people to submit stories for this book said they want the most horrific thing you can write, stuff that would never be accepted by any other publisher.
Wow. So
I
it sounds
it's
like
just
you
the
hit
right
the
thing.
mark. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wrote a brand new story, but kind of centered around that same idea. And it was a bullseye.
Wow. That's
Nice.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, recently we have had folks on the show that have dabbled within other speculative fiction genre besides horror. What is your favorite subgenre of speculative fiction?
Well, I really like the fantasy a lot. You know, the Lord of the Rings and movies along that line. Just the stories are very creative. You can make any type of world you want. It doesn't have to be this world. It could be anything your imagination can think up. And it's it's so creative and so much you can do with it. And I just really love some of the things you can make up, alternate worlds, throw in your own real life, love stories and things from this world that we deal with, but in an alternate reality. And that just, it's very inspiring what you can write and think up.
It sounds
Now-
like you're passionate about it.
Yeah, I love it. I do.
It's good.
Yeah, passion, that's the key. So now, why fantasy? What is it about fantasy that makes you want to write within its confines? Was it role-playing games? You mentioned The Lord of the Rings and things like that. Was it other things besides those things, or something else?
Well, I've always been creative, and whether it's something I'm trying to draw or a game I'm trying to create, program on the computer, but I've always needed an outlet, something to be creative. And I was reading the Lord of the Rings series for the second time, and I realized that one thing that makes the character special is that they have character. Every character is a character. You don't write about Tom, Dick, and Harry. Every one of the hobbits are different. Every character is different. Aragorn's different. Gandalf's different. They're all unique, and they're so flavorful because of that. And that's what makes the stories so successful is the characters. So when I go to write, first thing I start off with, who is this guy? What is he like? And don't worry about what story is happening or what's going on around them. Who am I writing about? And if the readers like the characters, they're gonna love the story.
True.
Let me ask you this, because you mentioned that your horror story had something that was so horrific, and that was intentional because that's what they were asking for. But I noticed that a lot of your horror stories that you've written also have a comedy in it. Is that intentional, or is that part of the groove when you just write?
Well, comedy's everywhere. People joke around all the time, even in the most saddest despair times. People are still joking, laughing, teasing each other. And there's going to be a point in every horrific story where you're going to make a joke or a jab at someone, or you're going to try to lighten things up just a little bit so that you can get back into the horror again and take that breath and then get back into it. And I think in real life people like that, and that's how it should be a story, because you want them to feel this would really happen. People would really act like this.
So
Shauna, do you
it's
have?
like comic relief, a bit of comic relief, but also a bit of just reality. You're keeping it. Yeah.
It's not with an intent to make it comic, and they're still dark, but everyone takes a moment to laugh, and if there's a time to say, that's what she said, I mean, somebody's going to say it, and this even in the most awkward times, like now.
Right.
But people are going to make a joke now and then, and in the stories, that's you got to write that in, because that's how people are. If you're going to stay true to a person's character.
True. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I was
Yeah,
going
do you
to
have another
ask.
question?
You've been working on a 2-manuscript fantasy epic that may be aimed at the young adult audience. And explain that a bit, and what made you decide to treat it as a series prior to the publication of the first manuscript?
Well, to be honest, it was a very big story. It's designed to be one story. It was meant to be an epic story, fantasy story, and it really
Like
is.
how long?
It's about 300,000 words, and everyone that I had sample it told me, it's an awesome story, but it's much for one book, and they absolutely loved it. But people kept saying, you get breaks into 2 books, you get break in 2 books. So I finally broke down and agreed with them, and I found a midpoint that was a perfect break of the story, where it completes a certain series that the main characters were trying to do, and then the next story could pick up from where it left off. So it was a good break where I could break it in
Cool.
two without it seeming like the book didn't really have an
Yeah,
ending.
cool.
But yet, if you read both books together, it's still one very long, epic story with so much flavor in it that I
Cool.
couldn't cut anything to make the story
Right.
shorter. It's not
Right.
droning on and on and on. There's just so much colorful flavor to it.
Wow.
And it's a great story, but it had to be told in two stories.
So when will we be seeing that?
Well, I don't want to publish the first until the second is fully edited. And I'm about halfway done with editing the second story.
Nice.
Um,
And
so-
it is young adult.
Yeah, I feel that, well, just face it, no matter how old you are, you love young adult. Everyone
Yeah.
loves young
Yeah.
adult. You can't say the same thing about kids with older fiction.
Right,
They don't always
exactly.
get it.
Yes,
But
yes.
everyone loves young adult. There's a
Yeah.
kid in everyone, whether you're a kid or an adult.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Hunger Games is supposed to be young adult.
Yeah.
I love Hunger Games.
Right.
Everyone loves
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to love it. It's just a big audience for it. And you don't have to get that serious and that dark to have a really awesome story. And that's where I wanted to be. 'Cause it's really, when you tell it to that crowd, it's a great story.
Yeah, I edited B.E. Scully's Tower of Together. That was a young adult story, and I absolutely loved it. It was a novella. She had that at Anthocon. I don't know if you saw
No,
it
I didn't
or
even know
picked
that
it up.
you
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
edited it. If
Yeah.
I had known, I would have
Yeah.
probably picked it up then.
Yeah, I think you might have. I know I
Yeah.
could have sworn you saw it. I think we have time for maybe one more question.
Okay, yeah, one more question, and we'll hear some of your stories of you read.
Sure.
Let's see here. Having a family, a full-time job, and even in my opinion, you're a hero, being a survivor of cancer. How do you find time to even get to write with all the things in your life besides writing?
Well, sometimes I don't. It's difficult. I got a lot going on. A full-time job, got to support the family, and that's first. And as much as I would like writing to be a first, the family's first. But sometimes it's not about having time or finding time. It's about making the time. So when you're inspired to write and you get the juices flowing, skip your favorite TV show or whatever it was you're gonna do, and just sit down, find a quiet spot, and write. And you gotta make the time, because the time's not gonna make itself. It's not gonna show up. You gotta make it happen.
Yeah, and it sounds like you love writing, so.
It's fun. It's a great outlet.
So you need to make the time.
Yeah.
And you deserve the time.
All right.
So what's coming next? And if people want to check out your unpublished works, how can they find you?
Well, what's coming next? I get a few things planned. Like I said, I want to finish my fantasy story, The Return of Mankind. And I get a prequel and sequel thought out that I haven't penned yet. I also have a story, Zombie Me, told from the perspective of the zombie.
That's
I want to
cool.
rewrite the ending and get that published as well.
Nice.
It's an excellent story. It's very dark, more dark than anything I've written.
Wow.
But a lot of people really love the story because of that, so I want to get that published.
Cool.
And,
All right.
and you're on Facebook and stuff too, right? People can
I
find
am
you
on
there?
Facebook. Yeah, I post some of my stuff now and then. You can find me on there, and
Very good.
when I have an update on something I'm writing, I'll most likely be posting it there.
Good.
Excellent. So you have something to read for us?
Yes, I do.
All right. Oh, you're going to read from the Bud
Bugs,
story,
yes.
which is a local story, right?
Yes, it's a story called An Invasion in Nashua.
Cool.
Nice, local, very local.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Matthew woke with a high-pitched ring between his ears and a headache that put to shame his worst hangover. For a moment, he forgot where he was until the cold pavement reminded him. "Cindy," he gasped, and reached to hold her hand. "Come on, wake up. Come on, please." "The bees," she cried, and scurried backwards into a corner. "Hush. You're fine. Listen," said Matthew. The two of them sat quietly listening to the silence. No buzzing, no screams, no vehicles racing away. Matthew ascended the stairs. When he reached the doors, he opened it an inch and looked out. The house seemed empty. A hint of lingering smoke mixed with the odor of coppery death. His first step made a crunch, crushing the carcasses of bugs that carpeted the floor. The smoke must have come up the vents, said Cindy. Looks like we got them all. Don't bet on it, Matthew replied, who pointed to a clock at the wall that read 6:35. We've been passed out all day. Who knows how many there are by now? It takes just one to survive, and Matthew froze as he peeked around the corner. The half-stripped bones of Zachary and Jenny lay on the ground where they died in a pool of blood. Don't, he said, putting his arm out to hold her back. His command had the opposite effect of what was intended, and she pushed forward into the doorway of the living room. Matthew clasped his hand tight over her mouth as she let out a piercing scream. Quiet. They have sensitive audio receptors. I'm sorry about Zach, but if they're still out there multiplying, like gremlins in bathwater, there will be a lot more to weep over than an unfaithful boyfriend you hardly knew. Can you hold it together? Cindy trembled as she nodded and backed away. What now? We hop in your car and get as far from here as we can. We were the first to examine them. Maybe we can help stop them. Matthew unlocked the deadbolt on the front door and peered out. Everything seemed normal at first, until he noticed the tiny bones on the edge of a bird feeder. That brought back the memory of Zach's pit bull. He turned toward the car and found the dog's skeletal remains. He scanned his surroundings, but there were no signs of the alien creatures. Matthew ran to the car and hopped into the driver's seat while Cindy went around to the other side. He tried to start it, but the engine wouldn't kick over. Start, damn it, he cried and bashed his fist into the steering wheel. I left it running. It's out of gas. Matthew turned the key once more, and the vehicle started. Without a word, he zipped backwards and out of the driveway and headed towards the city center. A short way down the road, he noticed a child's bike sitting on the sidewalk, resting against a pile of bones. He gazed at it in horror, unable to tear his eyes away from what was sure to be a parent's worst nightmare. Look out, Cindy shouted. He turned back to the sight of an overturned vehicle across the center of the road. He jerked.
I think we have to stop there.
That's okay.
That was great.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. And if you want to hear the rest of it, look up Bugs, Tales That Slither, Creep, and Crawl, published by Great Old Ones Publishing. And it has John's story and a story
Yes.
from Phil and one from me and many others. So thank you, John, for joining us tonight.
Thank
It's
you.
been a pleasure interviewing you with Phil.
Yep, and we'll have you back one day when you get those manuscripts published.
That'd be
Sounds
great.
good.
Love to.
Well, episode 38
Oh
of the Taco
my
Society is over.
Yeah, crazy.
38?
Yeah, I was telling my wife, I said, it's almost 3 years when you think about it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's a-
Wow.
Yeah, we're in our third year.
Actually, it is 3 years
Yeah.
because we took a 1 or 2 months off, and then and yet we made up one because
Oh,
you
yeah,
went to
yeah,
Virginia that
yeah.
time and so forth. So so 12 per
Wow.
year, right?
Yeah, isn't that something? Seems like yesterday.
Sure
It
does.
It does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it does.
it's crazy.
Well, we hope we're here for another
Yeah,
38
it's
episodes.
an honor to be
Yeah.
a member of the Taco Society.
Well, we're a good group.
Yeah.
We have fun.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
we do.
We'd like to thank our guests tonight, John Mack
Yeah.
and Doug Rinaldi.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
good
And,
guys.
hopefully we'll see them at Nikon or some convention or a book release signing. But until then, we'll be back next month.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you guys then.
Yeah.
Have a good night, everyone.